At 52, I stood at the podium, newly appointed CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Applause thundered, cameras flashed, and years of sacrifice crystallized into one shining moment. Then my phone buzzed. One message. 5 words. "We've moved out. Don't call." Emily didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She just left, with our children, our memories, and the last pieces of the life I thought I was still part of. While I delivered my acceptance speech, she was packing up 20 years of marriage. I chose the microphone over the door handle. I used to believe I was doing it all for them. The 12-hour days, the missed birthdays, the business trips during Christmas. Once I become CEO, everything will calm down, I told myself. But by the time I got the corner office, there was no one left to share it with. The night before my promotion, my daughter asked if I'd come to her school play. I looked her in the eyes and said, "I'll try, sweetheart." She nodded like she'd heard it 100 times before. Maybe she had. That moment, in front of my colleagues, I realized I had become the very man I swore I wouldn't. Successful, respected, admired, and completely alone. But this isn't just a story of loss. It's about what happened after. How a man stripped of everything that truly mattered chose to rebuild, step by painful step, not for redemption, not for applause, but because it was the only fight worth winning. If you've ever chosen the meeting room over the dinner table, this story might sound familiar. And maybe, just maybe, it's not too late for you either. My name is Daniel Cross, and I was born in a small Rust Belt town in Ohio, the kind of place where dreams either died quietly or escaped to New York or Chicago. My father was a mechanic who believed in overtime more than birthdays. He never missed a shift, but missed every recital, ball game, and Sunday dinner I can remember. When I was 12, he walked out with a suitcase and a note that read, "I have to think about my future." We didn't hear from him again. I swore I'd never be that man. After college, first in my family to graduate, I landed an entry-level position in a logistics firm in Cincinnati. The pay was terrible. The cubicle was gray and cold, but it was a foothold. I worked late but made it home in time for frozen pizza and reruns. Then I met Emily. She was a third-grade teacher with bright eyes and a quiet laugh. We met at a community book drive. She believed in slow dinners, handwritten cards, and making time. I believed I could do better than my father. Together, we believed we could make a life that balanced ambition and love. We married 2 years later in her mother's backyard, under string lights and the sound of summer crickets. We didn't have much. One used Toyota between us and a 2-bedroom apartment over a bakery. But we had plans. And more importantly, we had promises. When Emily told me she was pregnant with our first child, I felt something split in my chest. Fear, pride, and a tidal wave of urgency. I didn't just want to provide. I needed to. I told her I'd give our son everything I never had. Stability, opportunity, and presence. The early years were hard, but beautiful. I'd rush home after work, scoop up baby Lucas, and read him the same book every night. Goodnight Moon, until I had it memorized. On weekends, we'd go to the park, have pancake breakfasts, and sneak in naps while Lucas napped on my chest. Emily taught part-time, and we budgeted every dollar. But we were together. We were real. I remember one night, Emily said, "You're already a better father than yours ever was." I kissed her forehead and said, "Just getting started." At work, I gained momentum. My manager noticed my efficiency, my knack for negotiation. Promotions followed. First assistant manager, then operations lead. With each step up, our lives improved. Better apartment, new car, savings account. I made sure to still be home for bedtime stories, to never work on Sundays. I even turned down a job in Chicago because Emily's mother was sick and she needed to stay close. That decision felt right, noble even. But ambition is a whisper that turns into a roar. When the regional director position opened up, I saw it as the gateway to finally giving Emily everything she deserved. A house with a yard, college funds for the kids, vacations that didn't involve folding lawn chairs. I told her, just a couple of intense years, and we'll be set. She smiled, half believing, and said, as long as we don't lose what matters. And for a while, we didn't. Even with the long hours, I still managed to coach Lucas's Little League team and help Anna, our daughter, born 4 years after Lucas, practice piano. I told myself I was keeping my promise. But small things started to slip. A missed bedtime here, a rescheduled date night there. Emily would say, the kids asked about you tonight. And I'd reply, tell them I love them. I'll make it up this weekend. I believed that. I really did. Looking back now, that was the phase when the shift began. When good intentions started camouflaging a growing pattern. But in those days, I still thought I was winning. I had my family, my rising career, and my promises intact. I just didn't realize how quietly those promises were beginning to crack. The first real crack appeared when the company changed hands. A private equity firm bought us out, and suddenly everything was faster, sharper, colder. Metrics mattered more than relationships, and every manager was now expected to justify their worth in numbers. I adapted quickly. That adaptability earned me a promotion to regional director, just like I'd planned. The pay bump was significant, and the bonus structure was aggressive. The catch? I had to be everywhere, all the time. At first, Emily tried to keep pace with my schedule. She'd print my itineraries, pack my travel bags, leave sticky notes on my laptop that said things like, call Anna before takeoff, or Lucas has a game Friday. I'd nod, promise, and forget. My phone became my third hand. Conference calls replaced bedtime stories. I was always almost done. The excuses came easy. This deal will set us up for the year. If I miss this flight, we lose the client. I'll take a week off next month, I swear. And I meant it. Every time I said it, I meant it. But meaning it didn't bring me home. Emily noticed before I did. One night, after I returned from a 3-city business trip, I found her in the kitchen, staring at the calendar. You missed Lucas's science fair, she said quietly. I opened my mouth, already reaching for the excuse, but she held up a hand. He built a solar system out of wire hangers. He waited all night hoping you'd show up. I said what I always said. I'll make it up to him. She looked at me, tired but not angry, and said, they miss you more than you think. I hugged her, kissed her forehead, and told myself she was just overwhelmed. I was doing this for them after all, for the house we were saving up for college, for vacations, for security, wasn't I? One evening, while in Singapore negotiating a shipping contract, my phone buzzed with a message from Emily. No words, just a video. It showed Anna, barely a year old, taking her first steps across our living room carpet, her arms outstretched, wobbling, laughing. In the background, I heard Emily's voice. Come to Mama, that's it, you did it. I watched it twice, then a third time. Then I put the phone down and ordered another round of drinks for the clients at the table. They laughed. I smiled. I played the role. But deep inside, something twisted. When I got home 3 days later, Anna had already moved on to furniture surfing. I missed it. Her first steps. One of those once-in-a-lifetime moments, and I was in a rooftop bar clinking glasses over quarterly margins. Still, I told myself it was worth it. We closed the Singapore deal. I earned a record-breaking bonus that quarter. I bought Emily a bracelet I knew she'd never wear and gave Lucas a drone he played with once. I called it love. I called it compensation. Emily never brought up the video again. She just stopped sending them. The gradual drift was so subtle, so quiet, that I didn't even notice when the kids stopped asking if I'd be home for dinner. They just assumed I wouldn't. Lucas started going straight to his room after school. Anna, too young to understand, simply accepted that Daddy lived on FaceTime. I began to rationalize everything. They'll understand when they're older. It's better for them to have options than my presence. Other dads work this hard too. The lies were elegant, believable, even comforting. But one night, I came home early for me, which meant just past 9, and found the 3 of them on the couch watching a movie. I stood in the doorway, briefcase still in hand, and watched my family laugh without me. No one noticed I was there. I wasn't missed. I was being replaced by routines that no longer included me. Still, I told myself this was temporary. Just a phase. Just until the next promotion. Just until the next goal. Looking back, that was when I should have stopped. That was when I could have turned around. But I didn't. When I became Chief Operating Officer, it felt like the final lap before the ultimate finish line. The CEO was nearing retirement, and everyone, board members, senior staff, even competitors, whispered that I was the inevitable successor. I had built this ascent carefully, step by calculated step. I was no longer just climbing the ladder, I was defining it. With the promotion came a new house in an upscale suburb, a Tesla in the driveway, a remodeled kitchen Emily had once dreamed of. We had subscriptions to wine clubs, deliveries from farm-to-table grocers, and an extra room we called an office, but no one really used. Everything looked perfect. But the house was silent. Emily and I barely spoke beyond logistics. Lucas has practice at 5. Anna needs a costume for her recital. The plumber's coming Tuesday. Her voice was calm, efficient, professional, like a secretary coordinating with her boss. At first, I blamed stress. The company was undergoing massive restructuring, and I was in the middle of negotiations, mergers, and cultural overhauls. I told myself, just get through this quarter. But the quarter came and went, and the silence grew heavier. One evening, I came home to find Lucas at the dining table, scribbling in a notebook. I ruffled his hair and asked, "What are you writing, champ?" He shrugged, closed the book, and muttered, "Nothing." Later that night, I found the notebook on the couch. I shouldn't have read it. I know that. But I did. On one page, he'd written, "There's a man who lives in our house. He's not a stranger, but he's not really family either. He has the same last name as me, but we don't talk much. He's just there." I sat on the edge of the couch for a long time, that sentence echoing in my skull. A familiar name, a stranger's presence. My own son saw me as a ghost. I told myself he didn't mean it, that he was being dramatic, that teenagers write things they don't understand. I folded the notebook closed and never mentioned it to him. Instead, I opened my laptop and reviewed our Q4 projections, because there was still one more step to go. I had convinced myself that once I became CEO, the noise would settle, the pressure would lift, and I'd have time again. Time to be a better father, a better husband. I even made a list, family time goals, and taped it inside my briefcase, take kids to Yellowstone, weekly date night with Emily, be home by 6 p.m. 3 nights a week. None of those things happened. Instead, I filled my calendar with investor meetings, strategic retreats, international partnerships. Emily stopped asking about my schedule. Anna stopped waiting up for me. Lucas stopped leaving his door open. The more disconnected I became, the more I chased validation at work. I was invited to speak at conferences, featured in magazines, asked to mentor rising executives. I smiled in photos, shook hands at galas, and told stories about work-life balance I no longer believed. At a leadership summit in Boston, I was awarded Executive of the Year. They handed me a crystal plaque and played a video montage of my achievements. The audience stood and clapped. I smiled, nodded, waved. That night, alone in the hotel suite, I placed the award on the nightstand and stared at it. It sparkled in the dim light, beautiful and utterly hollow. I picked up my phone and scrolled through photos of the kids. Most of them were from years ago. The recent ones were blurry, distant, or had me cropped out entirely. I missed Lucas's first debate tournament, Anna's art show, Emily's birthday. I'd started this journey vowing to never become my father. But somehow, in chasing that promise, I'd become something worse, a man who saw the damage and kept walking. Still, I told myself, just make it to CEO. That's when it'll all be worth it. And so I did. While I was buried in boardrooms and quarterly forecasts, my family quietly adjusted to life without me, not through rebellion or confrontation, but through silence, routine, and the painful act of lowering expectations. Emily became the kind of mother who carried everything. She organized school projects, coordinated dentist appointments, attended every parent-teacher conference, alone. She juggled drop-offs and pickups like a seasoned chauffeur, packed lunches, folded laundry, paid bills. There was a time when we used to do those things together. Now she didn't even ask if I'd be available. She stopped fighting, not out of defeat, but out of self-preservation. Somewhere along the way, she realized it was easier to count on herself than to hope I'd show up. And I mistook her quiet for support. Lucas, our eldest, had once been fiercely competitive. He played soccer, ran track, even tried swimming for a season. But slowly, his cleats stayed in the closet. The track meets stopped. I didn't notice until Emily casually mentioned over dinner, one of the rare ones we had together, that Lucas had quit the soccer team. Why? I asked, genuinely surprised. She didn't look up from her plate. He said it's not fun when no one comes to watch. I opened my mouth, ready to defend myself, to say I'd been traveling, had back-to-back meetings, but the words caught in my throat. I hadn't even known he had games. He didn't tell me, I said weakly. Emily finally looked at me. Maybe because he stopped expecting you to be there. That night, I stood outside Lucas's room for a while, debating whether to go in. I imagined sitting on the edge of his bed, apologizing, promising I'd come to his next game, even though there was no next game. In the end, I just walked away. I told myself he probably needed space. The truth was, I didn't know how to face him. Anna, on the other hand, was still young enough to hope. She'd leave drawings on my office desk, stick figures holding hands, smiling faces labeled Daddy and Me. I'd find them between briefing papers and discard them without thinking, always meaning to thank her later. For her 10th birthday, Emily helped Anna create a video slideshow, photos from birth to present. She played it during a small backyard party. I was in Chicago that weekend, finalizing a distribution deal. I told her I'd make it up with something special, When I got back, Emily showed me the video on her laptop. It started with baby Anna in Emily's arms, then her first bath, first day of preschool, Halloween costumes, Christmas mornings. The music was sweet and soft. There were dozens of photos. Anna blowing out candles, painting, playing dress-up, building forts with Lucas. But not one had me in it. I watched the whole thing, waiting for my face to appear. A birthday, a holiday, a blurry candid, anything. I wasn't there. Were there really no pictures of me? I asked. Emily hesitated, then said, "There were, but she didn't pick them. I think she wanted it to feel real." The implication was clear. Her real didn't include me. That night I scrolled through my own phone gallery. Photos of spreadsheets, whiteboards, hotel rooms, airport lounges, a few selfies from business dinners. None with my children, none with Emily. In their absence, I'd created a new family. Clients, investors, colleagues, people who praised my work ethic, who said things like, "You're married to the job." I used to take pride in that. Now it felt like a curse. I started noticing things that had been there for a long time. Emily's side of the bed no longer faced mine. It angled toward the window. Her alarm was silent, vibrating on her wrist so it wouldn't disturb me. Lucas wore headphones even when no music played. Anna stopped asking me to tuck her in. I was the outsider in my own home, an occasional visitor who lived in the guest room of their lives. But no one complained. No one yelled. They had simply adapted. Because that's what families do when one of their own fades into the background. They learn to move forward without him. And the scariest part? I let them. There were signs, clear, flashing, unavoidable signs that I should have seen. Not subtle hints, but full alarms. I ignored them all. It started with Emily suggesting couples therapy. She brought it up one morning over coffee, her voice steady, her expression unreadable. "I think we should talk to someone," she said. "A counselor, just to help us figure this out." I didn't look up from my phone. What's there to figure out? "We don't talk anymore, Daniel, not really. I feel like I'm raising the kids alone and you're just—" "I have a board meeting this week," I cut in. "Let's talk after that, okay?" She stared at me for a second, then nodded. But she never brought it up again. A week later, I found a printed email folded neatly on my desk. It was from Lucas. He could have just texted me, but he'd written it like a letter. "Hi, Dad. Do you remember what color my eyes are? Don't look at a photo. Don't ask Mom. Just try to remember. Love, Lucas." I read it 3 times, then crumpled it up and tossed it in the trash. Not because I didn't care, but because I wasn't sure of the answer. I told myself it didn't matter, that he was just being dramatic, that kids test their parents. But deep down, I knew it was a direct hit. A perfectly aimed bullet. Still, I didn't call him. I didn't go into his room. I just moved on with my day. Then there was Mark, my oldest friend, the best man at my wedding, godfather to Lucas. We met for drinks during one of my rare free evenings. He worked in nonprofit now, had aged faster than me, but there was wisdom in his tired eyes. "You look like hell," he said, half joking. "Comes with the territory," I replied. "Emily called me." That got my attention. "She did?" "She's worried. Said she doesn't know who you are anymore. She's being dramatic." Mark leaned in. "You're losing them, Dan. You can't see it. But from the outside, it's already happening." I swirled the ice in my glass. "They'll understand when I become CEO. Everything I've done is for them." "No," he said softly. "Everything you've done is for yourself. You just told yourself it was for them." I laughed, not out of humor, but discomfort. You don't get it, man. You've always been okay settling. I'm building something. He didn't argue. He just paid the tab and left. I told myself he was jealous. The universe kept sending messages, and I kept pressing mute. Emily stopped texting updates about the kids. Lucas stopped saying good night. Anna started calling me sir as a joke, but the joke began to sting. One evening, I walked into the kitchen and saw Emily laughing with Lucas. Real laughter, warm and natural. When I stepped in, it died instantly. They both went quiet, polite. I had become the pause in the room. I was not unaware. I just refused to believe it mattered. I had my eye on the prize. Every ignored plea, every missed opportunity. I buried them under future promises. When I'm CEO, we'll travel. When this quarter ends, I'll take time off. When the pressure lifts, I'll be present again. But the pressure never lifted, and they stopped waiting. Emily planned a weekend trip to the mountains, just her and the kids. She told me a week in advance. I nodded, said I'd try to join, knowing full well I wouldn't. When I returned home that Sunday, the house felt cleaner than usual. Organized, like it had been reclaimed. I noticed something else, too. My office door was closed, locked from the inside. When I opened it, the family photos on the bookshelf were gone, replaced by books, just books. I found the photos later, boxed in the closet. No note, no confrontation, just quietly removed. It was a message louder than shouting. Still, I told myself, they're just upset. They'll come around. Just a few more months. Just make it to CEO. I repeated it like a prayer, but no one was listening anymore. I came home late one evening, later than usual. The house was dark except for the faint kitchen light Emily always left on. I dropped my keys on the counter and noticed a folder sitting on the table. My name was written across the front. Inside were papers, legal documents, drafts, printouts, notes, divorce proceedings, custody outlines, visitation schedules. Some pages were marked with highlighter. Others had comments in Emily's handwriting. The dates went back over a year. A year. She had been planning this for 12 months, maybe more. Quietly, methodically. While I was closing deals and giving keynote speeches, she was preparing to walk away. I stared at the folder for a long time. My first instinct was anger. Why hadn't she said anything? Why hadn't she confronted me? But then I realized she had. Dozens of times. In whispers. In tears. In silence. In the absence of her smile. I just hadn't been listening. Later that night, I found a letter on my pillow. Not from Emily, but from Anna. Written in crayon, the letters uneven and shaky. Dear Dad, I love you, but I don't remember what your hugs smell like. Mommy's shirts smell like flowers. Lucas's smell like soccer and peanut butter. Yours used to smell like something warm. Now I don't know. Love, Anna. I folded the letter and placed it in my wallet. Not out of sentiment, but because it felt like evidence. Proof that something inside me had broken too far to fix. The next morning, I asked Emily about the folder. She didn't yell, she didn't cry. She just looked at me and said, I wanted to give you time, a chance to come back on your own. For a year? I asked. She nodded. I thought maybe if you saw what you were missing, you'd stop running. And I didn't, I said flatly. No, she said. You didn't. She told me she hadn't filed anything yet, that there was still time, that she was waiting for me to decide. But I didn't decide. I rationalized, deflected, told her it wasn't the right time. that my CEO evaluation was coming up, that we could talk after that. She said nothing, just nodded again, and I mistook her quiet for agreement. 2 weeks later, I came home early, earlier than usual at least. I pulled into the driveway and saw Emily in her car, parked at the edge of the lawn. She wasn't moving. I walked over, knocked gently on the window. She jumped, then quickly wiped her face. "Hey," I said, "everything okay?" She hesitated, then unlocked the door. I slid into the passenger seat. "What's going on?" She looked straight ahead. "Anna asked me a question." I waited. She asked, "Does Daddy love us?" The words hit harder than any insult, any fight, any letter. "I told her yes," Emily continued, "because I think you do." But she didn't believe me. She asked, "Then why doesn't he show it?" I felt something shift inside me, something slow and heavy, like a building cracking at the foundation. "I didn't know what to say," she whispered. "I just sat here and cried." I reached out, touched her hand. She let me, but she didn't grip back. "I'm sorry," I said. The words felt useless. She nodded. "You always say that." We sat in silence for a while. I wanted to promise change, to declare bold gestures, but I had done that before. Always followed by another late night, another missed moment, another empty seat. So I said nothing. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized something terrifying. It wasn't that I was losing them. It was that I already had. The morning I became CEO began with applause, a ballroom packed with executives, shareholders, and reporters, standing, clapping, watching me ascend a stage I had spent my entire life climbing toward. My name was printed in bold on the projector behind me. Daniel Cross, Chief Executive Officer. Flashbulbs went off like fireworks. The board chair leaned in and whispered, "You earned this." I smiled, nodded, and walked to the podium. My speech was folded in my jacket pocket, memorized, rehearsed, polished. But before I could speak, I felt the vibration in my pocket. A single buzz, one message. I shouldn't have looked. But I did. It was from Emily. 5 words. "We've moved out. Don't call." My stomach dropped so fast I felt dizzy. For a moment, the room around me disappeared. The applause faded into a dull hum. I stared at the screen, reading it again, hoping I had misunderstood. "We've moved out. Don't call." I looked up, the crowd still waiting, smiling, cameras still rolling. This was the moment I had spent decades chasing. But all I could think about was what had just slipped through my fingers. I cleared my throat, forced a smile, gave the speech. Every word felt like cardboard in my mouth. I talked about growth, vision, culture. I told them about legacy and innovation, but the only thing I could hear, underneath the thunder of my own voice, was Anna's question echoing in my head. "Then why doesn't he show it?" Afterward, I shook hands, posed for photos, nodded through congratulations. Someone handed me a glass of champagne. I didn't drink it. I drove home faster than I should have, still in my tailored suit, tie loosened, heart pounding. The driveway was empty. Her car, the kids' bikes, gone. Inside, the silence was overwhelming. No backpacks by the door, no shoes scattered across the rug. The house smelled clean, sterile. In the living room, on the coffee table, sat a single item, our wedding album. Next to it, my house key. I picked up the album, flipped through the pages. Our wedding day, Emily's smile, my awkward tuxedo, Lucas as a toddler, hands full of cake, Anna in her first Halloween costume, summer trips, Christmas mornings, then nothing. No recent photos, No memories from the last few years. Just blank pages at the back. I sat down on the couch and stared at the key beside the album. It wasn't just symbolic. It was final. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I called again. And again. Nothing. I called Lucas. His phone was off. I texted Anna. No reply. I sat there for hours, still in my suit, surrounded by everything I had built, and nothing that mattered. I walked through the house like a stranger. The kitchen table still had faint rings from coffee mugs. The hallway walls, once covered in crayon drawings, were bare. The door to Anna's room was open, the bed neatly made, the stuffed animals gone. Lucas's posters had been stripped from the walls. The scent of their absence clung to every surface. I checked the bathroom. Her toothbrush gone. Her hairbrush. The small details that scream when missing. In my closet, her side was empty. Not just cleared, erased. I opened my laptop. Email from the board. Press coverage of my promotion. Headlines. Praise. Visionary leader takes the helm. Future cross ushers in new era. I closed it. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let the tears come. Silent, slow, hot. Not from surprise, but from the inevitability of it all. She had warned me. The kids had warned me. Mark had warned me. I just hadn't listened. Because I had believed I was the exception. That love would wait. That family would understand. And now, I was CEO. Of what? I spent the next 3 days trying to reach them, calling, texting, emailing. Every attempt met silence. Emily didn't answer. Lucas didn't respond. Anna's phone went straight to voicemail. I wrote a letter, on paper, not email. I thought the physicality might matter. I told Emily I was sorry, that I hadn't known how far things had gone, that I wanted to talk, to fix things. I used words like rebuild, family, future. I even signed it, with all my love. Daniel. I dropped it off at her sister's place, the only address I could think of. No reply. On the 4th day, I got a message. Not a text, not a call, a video. It was from Emily. The subject line read simply, "You missed this." I opened it. Anna stood on stage, dressed as a sunflower, surrounded by other children in bright costumes. Her voice was shaky, but she remembered her lines. Her small hands curled nervously at her sides. She scanned the audience, eyes darting, searching. She spoke her part. She smiled. She bowed. Then she looked out again, slower this time, and her smile faltered. I could tell exactly when she realized I wasn't there. She turned her head slightly to the side, as if hoping she had missed me in the crowd. Then she looked down at the floor. Her shoulders dropped, almost imperceptibly, but enough for any father to notice. The camera panned to the audience during the applause. Rows of parents stood clapping, beaming with pride. In the seat next to Emily, empty. I paused the video, rewound it, watched her scan the crowd again, and then I played it through to the end. The final shot was off stage. Someone, maybe Emily, had recorded Anna after the performance. She was in costume, backstage, holding a juice box. "I did good," she said quietly to someone off camera. "But I don't think Daddy saw it." There was a pause, a soft question I couldn't make out. Anna nodded. "Yeah," she whispered. I wish Daddy was in the audience. Just once." I dropped the phone. It slid across the floor, hitting the leg of the coffee table. I sat on the ground beside it and cried harder than I had in years. Not the kind of tears that come from frustration or stress. These were raw, from somewhere deep and dark. Because I knew what she meant. She wasn't asking for more toys, more trips, more promises. She wanted to look up from the stage and see me there. proud, present, and I hadn't been. I had chosen meetings over moments, titles over time. I had told myself I was doing it for them, but it had always been for me. The worst part? I couldn't get that night back. I sent another letter, this time to Anna. I told her I watched her video and that I was proud of her, that I was sorry I wasn't in the audience, that I should have been. I ended it with a line that made my hand shake as I wrote it. You deserved a dad who chose your voice over applause. I'm trying to become that man now. I didn't expect a reply. I just wanted her to know. I left the letter at Emily's sister's again. Then I waited. 3 more days passed. Silence. Then, on a quiet Saturday morning, my phone buzzed. A text from Emily. Just 3 words. She got your letter. No emoji, no punctuation, no invitation for more. But I clutched the phone like a lifeline. It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't the end. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat in the hallway outside Anna's old room, now empty, and stared at the framed photos still hanging on the wall. Our family at the beach, Lucas holding a kite, Emily in sunglasses laughing with a toddler Anna on her lap. I reached up and took one down, blew off the dust. My smile in the picture looked genuine. So did theirs. I couldn't remember the last time we all smiled like that. I carried the frame into my bedroom, placed it on the nightstand, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at it for hours. Around 3 a.m., I finally stood, loosened my tie, and unbuttoned my dress shirt. The suit jacket came off next, carefully hung, as always. Then I sat on the floor, back against the bed, bare feet on hardwood. Wearing only an undershirt and dress pants, I pulled my knees to my chest and broke. No defense, no rationalizations, no justifications, just tears. For the birthdays I missed, the games, the bedtimes, the questions I never answered, the hugs I never gave. I wasn't crying for what had happened. I was grieving for what hadn't. When the sun finally started to creep through the blinds, I stood, went to my office, and opened my calendar. There were meetings scheduled for the next 3 weeks. Executive strategy sessions, press interviews, board summits. I clicked cancel on all of them. Then I picked up the phone and called my assistant. Clear my schedule for the next 2 months, I said. There was a pause. Sir? I'm taking an extended leave, effective immediately. Another pause. Understood. Next, I called the CEO of our parent company. He didn't pick up. I left a message. This is Daniel. I'm stepping away for a while. Personal reasons. I'll send a formal notice by end of day. I understand if you want to start looking for a replacement. I ended the call. Then I turned to the only task that felt right. I wrote another letter. This one to Emily. I didn't begin with "I'm sorry." I'd said that too many times already. Instead, I started with honesty. Emily, you were right, not just about the last year, about all of it. I wasn't there. I wasn't present. I told myself I was doing it for you, for the kids. But the truth is, I was chasing something I thought would fill a hole I refused to acknowledge. And the deeper I chased, the more I lost. I became my father in a better suit. You gave me chances I didn't deserve, time I didn't respect, warnings I ignored. And even now, I don't ask for forgiveness. But I am asking for something harder. I'm asking for the opportunity to prove change is possible, not with promises, not with gifts, but with action. I'm stepping away from the title I thought defined me, because what actually defines me is what I've failed to protect, this family. You don't owe me anything, But if you'll let me, I want to show you, day by day, that I can be the man you once believed in. Not because I deserve it, but because you and the kids always did. Daniel. I folded the letter and placed it in an envelope. This time, I didn't leave it at her sister's. I drove it there myself. She didn't answer the door. I didn't expect her to. I placed the envelope in the mailbox, took a deep breath, and walked away. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running toward something. I was standing still. And finally, facing everything I had run from. I resigned on a Monday. No press release, no grand farewell. Just a quiet meeting with the board, a simple statement of intent, and signed paperwork that severed me from the title I had once wrapped my identity around. "You're making a mistake," one of the directors said. "You've worked your whole life for this." He was right. I had worked my whole life for it. And that was the mistake. After the meeting, I packed up my office, photos, plaques, notebooks, and placed them in a cardboard box. I left the corner office key on the desk. No ceremony, no sentiment. I didn't take a single call that day. The next morning, I liquidated my bonus and sold a large portion of my stock options. It wasn't a dramatic financial sacrifice, not for someone in my position. But it was enough to buy time, months, maybe longer, where my only job would be to rebuild the bridge I had nearly burned to ash. Then I moved. Not back into our old house. That place had too many ghosts, too many empty echoes. Instead, I rented a small townhouse 6 blocks from where Emily had settled with the kids. Modest, unremarkable, quiet. I didn't call her. I didn't send a note. I just moved closer. The next day, I drove by their school, not to see them, but to learn the rhythm of their days. I watched from across the street as Anna skipped out the front doors with her backpack bouncing, Lucas trailing behind her, headphones slung around his neck. Emily picked them up in the same blue SUV we'd bought together years ago. She looked tired, focused, familiar. I didn't approach. The following week, I started cooking. Every day, I made something. Not extravagant meals, simple dishes Emily used to love. Chicken pot pie, tomato soup, pancakes for dinner. I wasn't dropping them off. I wasn't trying to force an interaction. I was practicing presence. I began walking by their street on morning runs, not peeking in, just passing through, letting the air near their house remind me why I was doing this. One Friday afternoon, I stood across the street from the school and waited. I didn't know what I expected. I just stood there. When the bell rang, children poured out like a flood. Laughter, shouts, backpacks and sneakers and boundless energy. Then I saw Anna. She spotted me instantly. She stopped, stared. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just stood still, hands in my pockets. After a moment, she turned and walked toward Emily's car. No acknowledgement, but she had seen me. The next day, I left a small package at their doorstep. No note. Just a box of Anna's favorite markers and a pair of headphones Lucas had once mentioned, wanting in passing. Nothing expensive, nothing flashy. Just a whisper that said, "I remember." I repeated the ritual every few days, never too much, never intrusive. Sometimes, I caught a glimpse of Emily through the window, reading or folding laundry. Once, I saw Lucas in the yard, kicking a soccer ball absent-mindedly against the fence. Each time, I left without knocking. I was rebuilding something, and I knew I couldn't rush it. Presence isn't measured in grand gestures. It's measured in consistency. On the 3rd Saturday of that month, I got a message from Emily. "Soup was good. Anna said thank you." That was it. But I read it 5 times. That afternoon, I made banana bread, her favorite, and left it on the porch. A week later, I was walking near the school when I heard a small voice behind me. "Dad?" I turned. Anna stood there, backpack half-zipped, her jacket slipping off one shoulder. "You're really not working anymore?" she asked. I nodded. She looked skeptical. "So, what do you do now?" I crouched to her level. "Right now? I wait, I learn, I show up." She stared at me for a long moment, then shrugged. "Okay," she said, then walked past me to the car. Emily sat in the driver's seat watching. We locked eyes for half a second. Then she looked away. But she didn't drive off. That night, I didn't sleep. Not from worry, but because, for the first time in a long time, I had something to hope for. The first time Emily let me inside, it wasn't an invitation. It was necessity. Anna had the flu, and Emily needed someone to sit with her for an hour while she ran to the pharmacy. When I stepped into the house, everything felt familiar but unfamiliar, like walking into a dream version of your old life. The furniture was the same, but rearranged. The walls were freshly painted. My photos were gone. Anna lay on the couch, a blanket pulled to her chin. She smiled faintly when she saw me. "Mom said you'd come," she whispered. I nodded, took a seat beside her, and handed her a book I brought. She fell asleep 10 minutes later. When Emily returned, she didn't thank me. She just said, "She'll be fine," and walked past me into the kitchen. I lingered for a moment, then turned to go. Before I reached the door, she spoke. "I don't believe this is real," she said, without looking up from the counter. "I think you're doing this because you lost your title, because you're ashamed, because you hate failing." I turned slowly. "That's fair," I said. She finally looked at me. "So convince me otherwise." I didn't respond. I just left. Later that night, I sent her a message. "I'm not asking you to trust me yet. I'm just asking you to watch." Lucas was harder. He barely looked at me, let alone spoke. When I saw him outside their house tossing a basketball at the garage, I offered to rebound for him. He ignored me. I stayed anyway, quietly collecting the ball each time it bounced away and rolling it back without a word. After 10 minutes, he went inside without saying goodbye. I kept showing up. Once, I left a book about sports psychology at the front door with a sticky note that said, "Page 47 reminded me of you." No reply. Weeks passed. I started seeing judgment elsewhere too. A former colleague ran into me at the grocery store and blinked like he'd seen a ghost. "Jesus, Dan, what are you doing here?" "Shopping," he laughed. "I mean, here, in town, in public, not in your corner office." I stepped down. His eyes narrowed. "Mid-contract? You walked away from that comp package?" "Yeah." He leaned in. "Why?" "Family," I said. He blinked again, then smirked. "You serious? You nuked your career over a domestic crisis?" I didn't answer. He whistled. "God, you've changed." It wasn't admiration. It was dismissal. Word got around. An op-ed in a business journal referred to me without naming me as a cautionary tale. A promising executive undone by personal turmoil and emotion. Another said I'd let feelings cloud vision. I read every word. Then I printed them out and burned them in the backyard. That weekend, Emily invited me to join them for lunch. Not dinner, not a holiday, just sandwiches on the patio. Anna chatted. Lucas stayed quiet. At one point, Emily turned to me and said, "You know people are talking about you, right?" "I know." They're saying you threw your future away. I looked at her. I didn't. I just stopped trading my family for someone else's future. She stared at me for a long time. Then, almost reluctantly, she nodded. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't trust. But it wasn't resistance anymore. That night, I got my first text from Lucas. It read, "Page 47 was good. 3 months turned into 6. Seasons changed. School years advanced. The house down the street, the one I now called home, grew warmer, more lived in. Not because of furniture or decoration, but because of presence. My presence. At first it was subtle. Anna began waving when she saw me on the sidewalk. Then came short conversations. How was your day? Did you see my drawing? Want to hear my new joke? Her voice, once tentative, started to carry more confidence. Like she was relearning who I was and slowly deciding I could be trusted. Lucas took longer. One afternoon, he rang my doorbell. No warning. When I opened the door, he stood there holding a math textbook. Can you help me? He asked, eyes fixed on the porch railing. I didn't ask questions. I just stepped aside and said, yeah, of course. We sat at the kitchen table for 2 hours. I didn't lecture. I didn't correct too quickly. I waited. He explained what he understood, and I filled in the blanks. When he left, he said, thanks, without looking back. A week later, he came again. By the 3rd visit, he stayed for dinner. Anna started leaving her sketches on my table again. They were better now, detailed, expressive. She even drew a version of me, short hair, tired eyes, smiling. On the back, she wrote, I like this version of you better. I pinned it to my fridge. Emily noticed. She came by one afternoon to drop off a folder of school forms I had offered to handle. While I filled them out, she wandered through the living room, pausing at the fridge. She read Anna's drawing, smiled, quietly, a real one. It was the first time I'd seen that smile in 3 years. She didn't say anything. But when she left, she touched my shoulder lightly and said, You're doing good. I stood at the door for a long time after she drove away. Our interactions became more frequent, then more natural. She started letting me take the kids every other weekend. We coordinated school schedules, doctor appointments, soccer tryouts. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when Lucas would shut down or Emily would go quiet mid-sentence and lose her train of thought. I knew those silences well. They were scars being felt, not spoken. But they didn't last as long as they used to. One night I picked Anna up from art club. She climbed into the passenger seat and said, We're supposed to draw someone we admire for our next project. I braced myself. She continued, I picked you. I didn't speak. I couldn't. She looked over. Is that okay? I nodded, choking back whatever was rising in my throat. Yeah, that's more than okay. At home, I started new routines. Breakfasts on Sundays, homework help Wednesdays, movie nights that we didn't plan in advance. They just happened. Spontaneous, simple, real. I was learning their new selves. The versions of my children I had missed while buried in conference calls and travel schedules. Lucas had developed a dry wit and a sharp sense of justice. He challenged everything, questioned everything. I respected that. I encouraged it. Anna was thoughtful, observant, and fiercely loyal. She noticed when people were hurting. She noticed when I was tired. Don't work too hard, Daddy, she'd say when I answered an email late. That's how you missed all the fun stuff before. I smiled, closed the laptop, and said, You're right. Emily and I spoke often now. mostly about logistics, but sometimes about deeper things. One evening, we were sitting at a soccer game, Lucas on the field, Anna doodling in her sketchbook beside us. Emily turned to me. "You're consistent," she said. I waited. "You used to be grand. Now you're steady. That means more." I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because I understood. This wasn't a story of sweeping redemption or dramatic reconciliation. This was something quieter, something stronger, the slow rebuilding of something I had thought was lost. And every smile, every shared glance, every ordinary moment, it was proof that foundations, when tended with care, could hold weight again. Even the weight of a second chance. The day Emily asked to speak privately, I thought it might be another boundary. Another reminder that, while things were better, there were still lines I shouldn't cross. Instead, she sat across from me at the kitchen table, fingers laced, eyes steady. "I've been offered a promotion," she said. "It's with a literacy nonprofit, regional director, but it's in Seattle." I blinked. Seattle. She nodded. "They want an answer in 2 weeks. The kids would have to change schools. I'd be traveling a lot more." "And you?" I asked. "What do you want?" Her voice softened. "Part of me wants to go. I've turned down a lot of things over the years, for stability, for the kids, for you. But I don't know if I can uproot everything. I don't want to make them feel like they're being shuffled again. And I don't want to lose this. Whatever this is, we're rebuilding." I didn't hesitate. "Take the job." Her eyes widened slightly. "Just like that?" I nodded. "Let me be the one to support you this time." There was a long silence. Not tense, just full. Then she smiled. "Thank you." That conversation marked a shift. We weren't just repairing what was broken. We were building something new, stronger, clearer, more balanced. The kids took the news better than expected. Lucas shrugged and asked if Seattle had a decent soccer program. Anna squealed and asked if we'd live near any mountains. I found a home that could fit all of us, modest, with a backyard and a cozy kitchen. I coordinated the movers, researched school districts, and even planned the goodbye dinner with our neighbors. It was my first time managing a family transition without handing it off to Emily. When we arrived in Seattle, I didn't look for a new corporate role. I took on a part-time operations consulting gig, remote, flexible, low stakes. My calendar stayed clear for pickup schedules, dance recitals, and family dinners. Each morning, I made breakfast. Each evening, I was home. Emily thrived in her new role. She came home energized, filled with stories of her team, her work, her impact. The kids noticed, so did I. And I felt none of the jealousy I once might have, only pride. On our first Christmas in Seattle, we decorated the tree as a family, Lucas untangling the lights, Anna insisting we make handmade ornaments, Emily humming off-key to the same playlist we'd played a decade ago. At one point, I stepped back to take it in. The laughter, the warmth, the ordinary magic of a night I once would have missed for a meeting. Emily noticed. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "Just grateful." She leaned in. "Me too." Later that week, she asked me to join her at a fundraising gala. Not because she needed a date, but because she wanted to share her world with me, the way I had once made her orbit mine. I stood beside her as she gave a speech to a room of donors and educators. She spoke about literacy, empowerment, and second chances. When she finished, she glanced at me from the podium, and for a split second, I felt what she must have felt all those years ago. Watching someone she loved succeed while wondering if it would cost everything. Now it didn't. Afterward, she took my hand and said, "You belong here, not because of what you do, but because of who you've become." That night, after the kids were asleep, I pulled a small box from the drawer beside our bed. It wasn't jewelry, no grand gesture. Inside was a folded note Anna had written me a year ago, the first time she called me Dad again in a drawing. I handed it to Emily. "I kept this," I said, "because it reminded me that redemption doesn't come from apologies. It comes from presence." She opened the paper, smiled, then reached for my hand. And in that moment, I knew we had done more than survive. We had transformed. The television studio lights weren't as harsh as I remembered. Maybe it was because I wasn't there to sell a product or pitch a vision. I wasn't hiding behind polished statistics or ambitious forecasts. This time, I was telling the truth. The host introduced me with polite reverence. Former CEO of a Fortune 500 company, now founder of Reclaim, a nonprofit supporting professionals seeking to restore broken family bonds. I adjusted my mic, took a breath, and began. "I once believed success was measured in square footage, titles, and applause," I said. "But none of that mattered the night I received a text from my wife. 5 words that ended a chapter of my life. We've moved out. Don't call." The studio grew still. I chased boardrooms and headlines while my daughter scanned school crowds looking for me. I chose the spotlight over their eyes. I justified my absence as sacrifice. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid to be still, to be vulnerable, to be seen beyond what I accomplished. I paused, letting the weight settle. I don't tell this story for sympathy. I share it so someone else doesn't have to wait until their family leaves to realize they were already gone. The host leaned forward. "You gave up everything for your family. Do you regret it?" I shook my head. "I didn't give up anything. I reclaimed what I never should have lost." That interview went viral, not because I was eloquent, but because I was honest. People reached out by the thousands. Emails, letters, stories of missed graduations, empty dinners, silent drives home from work where something felt wrong, but they couldn't name it. Reclaim became more than a nonprofit. It became a movement. We hosted workshops, retreats, even anonymous story circles where high-powered professionals sat in circles and spoke, sometimes for the first time, about the toll of unchecked ambition. One morning, I stood in front of a room of 50 men and women, all former executives, lawyers, surgeons, some divorced, some estranged from their kids, some still trying to catch what they never realized was slipping away. I told them what I now believed, that the greatest legacy isn't in the deals we close, but the doors we keep open for our children to walk through. Then came the talk show invitation. National television, prime time. I debated it, not for the attention, but for the chance to reach someone in that dangerous space I once lived in. Too successful to stop, too disconnected to feel. As the interview wrapped, the host smiled and said, "We have a surprise for you, Daniel." I froze. From the side curtain, Emily stepped into the light. Behind her, Lucas, taller now, confident, and Anna, carrying a small box. I stood, stunned. Emily spoke first. "We wanted to be here tonight, not because this story is perfect, but because it's real." Lucas nodded. "He didn't just change, he stayed changed." Anna stepped forward, handed me the box. Inside was the drawing she made 2 years ago, the one she'd labeled, "I like this version of you better." She'd redrawn it, same smile, same eyes. But now, I was holding both her and Lucas in my arms. Below in careful lettering, she'd written, We forgive because you turned back. I couldn't speak. Emily reached for my hand, and in front of a studio audience and millions watching at home, we stood together, not as a picture-perfect family, but as a testimony to what healing truly looks like. Not loud, not sudden, but earned,